Morning. So as we can see from the slide, this morning we're talking about making Microsoft 365 work for you, prioritising security, maximising efficiency. Our preferred and recommended standard when it comes to using Microsoft 365 is their business premium offering. There is a lot of obvious and hidden value packed into this subscription. So starting with the old faithful, Outlook, Word, Excel and PowerPoint. So these are accessible as installed applications, as you're aware. You probably use on your laptop, also available in the cloud via web browser. Moving on to systems that secure and store our data and manage what we should and shouldn't have access to. We have the likes of Exchange and OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams. Systems that assist us with keeping organised and managing our notes, the likes of To-Do and OneNote. And then there's a whole lot of other systems. These provide project management, they provide automation, data collection and sharing, rapid communication, diagramming, the list goes on and on. So collectively, this is a comprehensive suite of cloud-based productivity and collaboration tools. It's scalable and tightly integrated, and we know that when it's implemented correctly, it's genuinely a productivity game changer. So I guess summarised here a little bit down the right-hand side there, these are powerful tools for communicating and collaborating quickly inside and outside of your organisation. So common examples include extending SharePoint beyond just document storage with communication sites, or using Teams to surface the right data on the right devices to the right employees. There are opportunities to automate existing business processes using tools such as Power Automate and the likes of lists. So we're thinking here about replacing spreadsheets or spreadsheet models or clumsy paper systems. And finally, and importantly, key security systems like Defender and Intune, both of which feature in the background at a data and device level, ensuring only approved employees can access your Microsoft 365 systems and data. So here's where we're going to interact with you on Slido. We're going to ask the question here, how long has Microsoft 365, or what was previously termed Office 365 going back a while, been available? So in Slido now, you should be able to see that question on your phone. I'm seeing some nods. So essentially it's just a case of tapping the answer and hitting submit. There we go, look at that, technology's working. Yeah. It's still coming in. You've got to love the live interaction. All right, so we're all sitting around 13 years. So in fact, that's actually the case. So back in June 2011 is when it basically was released to the public after some trials. And so at the end of the day, this is not a new technology, I guess is the point we're trying to make here. It's been consistently improving over time, and what it offers today is hard to ignore in terms of business gain. There's lots of, I guess, opportunity on the horizon as well. When we think about coupling in the future Microsoft 365 with Copilot, for instance, and some of you are actually in the process of using Copilot as well, in addition to your 365 licensing, that holds even more productivity relevance in the future. So you're likely to be using many of the Microsoft Business Premium systems every day. And if you're like me, it can be easy to forget just about how clever this design in fact is. The username and password that you use most days to log onto your laptop, or that secure fingerprint or Face ID you use on your phone, is your secure entry point into a well-tuned Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So there's by no mistake that all of these Microsoft solutions lock together and talk to each other. So your secure logon on the left there, coupled with MFA, provides you with secure and seamless access to all these systems from multiple devices at once. So when you think about it, even though it's somewhat automatic and when we just get in there and use it, once you're logged in, there's no real prompting for usernames and passwords every time you open a system. Your secure Entra ID is your Microsoft passport, essentially, to move freely and fluidly through all of these Microsoft 365 Business Premium systems. The design of the system means that it's personalized and relevant to you. So Microsoft 365 knows who you are, it knows who your manager is, the colleagues you interact with, the documents you recently created, accessed or shared, which devices you're logged into, where to push your Teams messages to, what data you're allowed to access and what you're not, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So over its long life cycle, Microsoft 365 has become more and more focused on security as threat landscapes have grown. Business Premium offers a number of security enhancements. It's just stepping through identity checks. Is that really you? So these are checks and balances to validate that it's indeed you logging into the system. Geographical logic checks. So if you logged in at 9:35 a.m. in Hamilton and then logged in again at 10 past 10 in Perth, clearly there's something not right here. There's someone using your account. Being able to detect that, automatically alert, and then disable the account. Another example is setting up MFA to be mandatory as a mandatory standard on all of your accounts. So when you create an account, or we create an account for you, MFA is applied as a standard. There's no option to forget about it. Device checks. Is this a known managed device? If your device is managed through Microsoft 365 Business Premium, through a system we called Intune, then we can verify at two levels that it's in fact you with your logon and MFA, and that you're also using a device that's managed and approved. Enhanced cyber threat protection. Microsoft Defender working for you in the cloud. So working alongside other endpoint protection tools like CrowdStrike and email filtering systems to provide a wide coverage in terms of protection. We call that a multi-layer approach. And finally, data loss prevention, and this can be used to improve your data security controls. So it's your ability to classify data and put in place business rules to control if sensitive data can be emailed or shared outside of the business, or even internally if it can be viewed but maybe not printed. The introduction of MFA, that big mouthful of multi-factor authentication, some time ago has provided an important step in protecting our systems and our data. MFA has proven to be hugely effective and is now considered a necessity for business, much like wearing a seatbelt in a motor vehicle. The addition of conditional access policies builds on MFA, allowing organisations to be even more granular with their log-on controls. You can blacklist or whitelist incoming log-on attempts based on the country of origin, for example. You can also ensure that guest accounts that come into your tenancy, so you may be using Teams with a supplier or a customer, that log-on they use to connect in, we often assume that their account is secure and they are using MFA. Conditional access allows us to actually ensure that they can only connect if they're MFA qualified. You can block log-ons that are considered impossible, like we mentioned before, and then use conditional access policies to block log-ons occurring on unsupported devices, or only approve log-ons through devices that meet certain criteria. So checking to see if that device has got antivirus in place or if it's got the latest security patches installed. Second question, how much does multi-factor authentication with conditional access policies reduce the risk of account compromise? Go. Well, we're not looking at 4%, that's pretty clear. Okay, so it's 99.9. It's not to be sneezed at, is it? With conditional access policy, your team is 99.9% less likely to fall victim to a phishing attack or have Microsoft 365 compromised. Let's talk about Microsoft Intune. I want you to stop and think about what it costs each time you allocate out a new laptop or a desktop, along with a smartphone to a new employee. By the time you also account for a docking station and a couple of monitors and a bag and a mobile plan, it all adds up. And many of you know this, you're involved in procuring these items. Your device fleet represents some significant capital spend. And that's okay, given the dependency today is high, and it's just about supplying the right tools to get the job done. But how do we make sure we're extracting the maximum value from these IT investments? How do we ensure that we optimize, secure, and effectively manage these devices? This is where Intune can be used, and it's already part of your business premium licensing and designed to do exactly that. Next question. How many laptops are stolen on average each year in New Zealand? 7,000, 22,000, 32,000, 420. It has to be said that we clearly connect with some of the brighter businesses in Hamilton, because yet again, you have the right answer. It's 22,000, that data source from IAG. So why do I mention that? One of the key features of Microsoft Intune, built into Business Premium, is the ability to remotely wipe business data on lost or stolen devices. So being able to do that centrally from anywhere. The ability to manage all devices used by employees, both those supplied by the business or bring your own device, those personal devices. Probably where we see this more commonly is where businesses opt for some of their staff to use their own personal devices to access company data. Automatically install and update business apps out to devices, ensuring the recent features and security settings are current. And making sure that these devices and apps are compliant with your agreed business standards and security standards, or it might be compliance requirements that you're driven to by your industry or by your business partners. Under the cover of Intune, it really comes down to two things. Mobile device management, which is, as the picture suggests, is actually about managing the device itself, the hardware, and mobile application management, which you can see circled on the right-hand side there, is actually around securing and managing the apps. So MDM and MAM, you needed another three-letter acronym to cart around in your IT collection, but that's what they are. So when you hear us refer to those, that's in fact what we're talking about. So if we're talking about MDM and dealing with a device, we're talking about being able to wipe the device to be repurposed for another employee, or as we talked about before, wipe it if it's stolen or lost. We can ensure that bring your own personal BYOD, personal devices, accessing business data, actually have PIN numbers forced on them in place. I still see people out and about using personal devices, believe it or not, without any type of security. Just pick it up and there's no Face ID, there's no PIN number, it's still happening. And then just simple practical things like being able to push out the Wi-Fi usernames and passwords out to those devices for your staff, so that whole hassle of having to deal with that is actually all dealt to. The device connects the Wi-Fi itself. Mobile application management examples, setting up an app store for your business, making approved apps quickly available, and in the case of a new phone, having them pre-installed, ready to go. And also ensuring the apps are always up to date and secure. So no more depending on staff to do their own IT on their phone and updating the applications themselves in order for everyone to be using the same platform. Autopilot is another word you'll hear associated with Intune. And look, there's a little bit involved in getting it set up and established, but the business benefits are absolutely worth it. I'm not going to deep dive into this at the moment, but the upshot is that it simplifies the deployment and configuration of Windows devices, so laptops, desktops, equates to faster deployment, reducing the time it takes to actually get that system set up ready for use, and reduction in complexity and time. So in practical terms, we're talking about being able to direct ship a laptop to you, open it up, log on with your username and password, and then the software, Autopilot with Intune, does a really good job of saying, hey, I know who you are and I know which applications you need, and goes away and actually installs that. 40, 50 minutes later, you're actually up and running. So if you're thinking about that in terms of, I guess, onboarding or replacing devices for staff, it's a pretty significant moment. Nige Pemberton, who's going to join me on the stage, is our professional services manager. He does a lot of work with Waikato businesses in the design and effective use of Microsoft 365 and everyday business. Nigel's headed numerous transformation projects and has a wealth of knowledge in this space. He's going to provide us with a practical demonstration of business premium in action, and many of the things that I've touched on this morning apply to a day in the life of an employee. As he presents these possibilities, I just invite you to reflect on how you could be extracting more value from your Microsoft investments.
Thanks, Bevan. Morning, everybody. So I've worked with many of you before, and some of you are new faces to me. So I'm Nige. Like as Bevan said, I do a lot of this work in 365 and modern business transformations. The demo that I'm going to be walking through today is Miriam Graham. I shan't be cross-dressing, although I considered it. So I will be Miriam, but I will also be flicking between Miriam's profile and Miriam's manager profile, which is my admin account, in the fictitious tenant of 77 North. 77 North is a multinational, diversified, small to medium enterprise that does everything you've ever imagined. So it's a great place to demo these sorts of things. The experience that we're going to go through today with Miriam, or as Miriam, is it's going to be showing her joining the business in New Zealand, so her onboarding into 77 North. She's going to start doing some work, head across to Australia for a business conference. While she's in Australia, because she's a real go-getter, she's going to take an impromptu holiday over to Bali. From Bali, she's going to head back to New Zealand and she's going to retire. Okay? Miriam gets things done quick. So the demo, there's not going to be any planes involved in the demo, but we're going to mentally imagine that's the experience we've gone through. And then I'll be, again, dropping across to the admin account to show you what the approval experience looks like for Miriam's manager. Okay? So I'm just going to pop across to Miriam. So when Miriam joins the business as a candidate, prior to being in 77 North, she gets sent a link to the onboarding site. So she gets an email link to her Gmail or Outlook.com personal email address, and she starts to get the experience of what it means to be working for 77 North. The look and feel is consistent with 77 North's branding. The messaging's on point. Starting to set expectations about what working for the company is going to look like. It's a fantastic way to start getting the team in the right mindset, drinking a bit of corporate Kool-Aid so that they hit the ground running and they know what's expected of them. But it's done in a really nice, user-friendly fashion. She can be sitting back on her mobile phone doing this at night, or log on her laptop, sit at the dinner table after dinner one night and just sort of start going through, getting her mind in gear for her new job. But it's not a one-way street. We're using this opportunity to take information from her to help us with the onboarding experience from a back office and administrative perspective. Okay, so hands up if you've ever had that flustered last minute, we've got someone coming in and they start on Monday, and by the way, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday. I know people have had this. Yeah, yep. It's a tough spot to be. This helps remove that. Of course, it doesn't prevent that from happening, but it helps ease that sort of pressure. Okay, it gives us a bit of runway and a bit of leeway in terms of managing that information in. So Miriam, she jumps down here and she can see, okay, I've read about my first week, how we handle hybrid working at 77 North. Okay, onboarding information. So she can jump in and start providing the business some information. So she fills in some, and this can be quite comprehensive information. We at IT Partners use this for personal emergency and medical information, so we collect all that stuff before anyone's ever joined. But for here, it's a quick demo, so we're just going to say, Miriam Graham, she's a spring chicken, but she's going to retire early because she's just done such a good job in her career. So she's a 2000, yep, she's May 14th, 2000. She's on First Street. That's her mobile number. It's a big number. and she's got an email address. So mg@gmail.com. Okay, so that's submitted. So that information from her personal Gmail account has been pushed back into our corporate data and now sits inside the people and culture team as some information that they can then process and start the back office processes of getting her onboarded. Not everything's so easy though. We've still got things like KiwiSaver forms, IRD forms. Perhaps there's some other contracts or specific pieces of paper that we need to deal with in PDF form. So as much as possible, we try and collect information digitally from a digital form, but where we've got PDFs, we still make those forms available. But hands up if you've ever had to onboard someone, you're like, what was the form we had to send? Oh, we go searching through a folder, we find and you send the wrong version of the form. And in fact, you sent IRD's old KiwiSaver form or some nonsense form that hasn't been used for 2 years, but someone put it in the production list of your documents. That sort of stuff never has to be considered again because we're managing that information sitting in the pre-onboarding side. Whatever's here goes to whichever candidate you're onboarding. So we're controlling it and we're giving everyone a consistent user experience. There's a nice bit of simple information. Download these forms, fill them out, put your e-signature on there, email them back to this email address with this subject line, and away we go. That then triggers some automation in the background that kicks off onboarding process to send account creation requests to IT, making sure that the information's correct, and people and culture can wrap around that experience and give an exceptional concierge type service, but they're not having to monitor things and wait for things to come in or chase them. It just happens. So Miriam sets the pace and then she receives concierge service. Why would we go to this effort? Any ideas? Why do it? I'll give you a good reason why. I've got a reason. The reason is, the better the onboarding experience for people, the faster they hit the ground running and the easier their approach onto the learning curve is. That translates to a faster return on investment or a faster time to value for their role. If you're thinking about all the people you employ over the years, if you can take time to value from 6 months down to 3 months and improve employee experience at the same time so your retention numbers improve, you're having this massive sort of long-term effect on the profitability of your human resources, the people that you hire. Right? So this is not just airy-fairy fluff. It looks like it and it feels like it, but it actually translates to business value for us. And it's important. It's done in a secure fashion. It's done with high quality and it allows those people to hit the ground running. Once Miriam's joined the business, the onboarding experience, she comes to the business, she goes to the Compass. So the Compass is the intranet site for 77 North. It's a SharePoint site. Sitting there in the center of their SharePoint world. Many of you will have seen intranets. Many of you have SharePoint intranets already. But it's about using that asset over time and improving it so you can see where we can make improvements and add value as the company gets used to using a simple intranet. We see that there's areas where we can start adding extra value around the edges of it. This intranet is reasonably basic still, but it's got some nice stuff. It's got some leave calendar things, a leave calendar down the bottom, some forms for leave applications, expense claims and things like that, as well as little departmental sites that are tailored to each department. We'll have a little look at that in a minute. For now, there's the onboarding, the onboarding experience. So once she's in-house, she again gets to pick up that experience that she got a taste of before she joined the company, but she's super familiar with it. She knows, she's seen something like this, and it carries on. Guide to Hamilton, what's around the office? What do we expect from you when you're onboarding? What do we need you to see? Health and safety, strategy and culture. Some businesses, or many businesses, especially in manufacturing, engineering, or health and safety critical environments, use this as the time to capture acknowledgements for policies, critical manuals, health and safety manuals, that sort of stuff. Things where we need to A, get people to read stuff, and B, evidence that they've read it. Okay? So if you're in an ISO type environment, this is a great opportunity to have that information captured and auditable. So we can show an auditor, here's the list of all the people that have read and acknowledged this manual in the last 12 months, 18 months, whatever it looks like. Okay? So that's Miriam's onboarding experience. Then she's up and running, and she's working in teams. She's in the sales and marketing team. So she's able to, use Teams to do the work, communicate with her team, and manage core workflows. In sales and marketing team at 77 North, they've got a team planner that tracks tasks for the team. They have product development. They have product development workflows that automate through. So when ideas come in on their sales and marketing SharePoint page, they then push through to a list. The team views that list, curates it, accepts it, rejects it, and then if an idea is accepted from a product development perspective, that's pushed through and becomes a workflow. That's actually we've demoed that before in a previous session, so we're not going to jump into it, but it's an example of Power Automate working in the background, helping workflows just manage through. And we're letting the business run those workflows. Once the workflow's been set, it guides people through the workflow. We're not having to keep people on task and go, oh, have you done that thing you need to be doing? The workflow guides them back because the workflow is built around what adds the most value to the business. So from here, Miriam's going to jump on a plane. She's going to head across to Australia, and she's going to a conference in Australia. She lands in Australia, opens up her phone, carries on working. She starts messaging on Teams, doing her work, accessing files, and away she goes. Gets to the hotel, does her work on a laptop with no problems, straight in, up and running, and an absolutely seamless transition across to Australia or wherever she's gone. She hasn't had to let IT know that she's going to Australia. We're not having to whitelist Australia or anything with CA because all of her devices are Intune registered. So because they're enrolled in Intune, they know that she is her and her device is hers, and we are controlling the device. So risk around her device and her being in Australia is known, and we're happy with it, and she doesn't have to be inconvenienced by any IT process to be able to carry on working, just as IT doesn't have to be inconvenienced to go and whitelist a specific country because a user's gone there. Many of us travel for work. This is a thing that we often have to do. Or if we're not doing it, we will have things set up so there's a system in behind where we have to, the team's monitoring and checking who's traveling this week. So there's work one way or another to allow this work to seamlessly happen when we're traveling across borders. Intune, registered devices allow us to do that, and we're not accepting any additional risk from a business perspective to do that. Okay? So she's over there. She says, right, I've got to do an expense claim because I've paid for this rental car for myself. So she jumps in and puts her details in here. Why would I be putting my name in a form when we know it's her? Because we're actually capturing her details. We know who's captured this. The reason here is some organizations have employees that aren't M365 registered. So if they don't have an email account, if they're working as a driver, or if they're working in a role that they are in a shared sort of a production environment where there's a production computer, but they're not actually accountable to that profile themselves, but they have the need occasionally to spend expenses, we need to capture that information as well. So that's why we're putting her name in here. She's done rental booking with Avis, and it's rental car. It was $650 from her personal card. And we're going to code it to flights, and we're going to upload file. If she was on her mobile device, she'd be able to just simply take a photo. I've uploaded this doc there, so it's nice and easy for us to demo. So that's going to upload, submit that, and that's whizzing its way back through to cyberspace, back into 77 North in New Zealand, sitting in the finance team site, ready to be processed by payroll. While she's over there, this is when wild Miriam's come out to play, and she's decided, you know what, you only live once, I'm going to Bali. So Miriam also punches through a little leave request. Miriam G, annual leave. I'm her manager. She's going to go on leave on Friday and finish up next Tuesday. That's 3 days leave, 24 hours. Holiday to Bali. All right, submit that. I've got clients who still do this stuff with paper, actual pieces of paper, not even an email, but a piece of paper with a signature on it, okay? So there's a broad spectrum of how this data can be managed. This is one way of doing it. This isn't to say if you have an HRIS system, you'd replace your HRIS system, but certainly if you've got no system or a bunch of sort of muddled up systems, this is a nice way to handle it because it's all nice and secure and it all comes in under Microsoft and you're already paying for it. It's in the license. Okay, so Miriam sent that stuff across from Australia and she goes on about her work and carries on over there doing whatever she's doing at the conference. I'm going to flip across to her manager's account now. So this is the demo admin account. Her expense claims request came through to finance. This is the finance site for the Compass. So this is the departmental SharePoint site that sits in behind the finance team. Okay? So this is included with the team, but we're now augmenting it and using it as a place to add a lot more value than just document storage. So here's the expense claims, and this is where they sit, and we can see here's Miriam Graham's recent expense claim. It hasn't yet been approved, so it sits here as under a new status, and we can see details. We could log in and we could open the attachment and see what the receipt looks like as well. Same thing over in the people and culture site. So this is where the leave applications come through to. And we've got a leave application, still new status, holiday to Bali, cool, 24 hours, that sounds great. So that data has been pushed through and it is sitting there. We're not having to monitor for it, it's just gone there and is waiting to be processed by payroll or HR, which is fine. What does the approval experience look like? So Miriam Graham's manager has received an expense claim request here. So there's some information that's come through, $650, Avis rental car, that's fine. The manager can look at it, simply push approve, type any comments that they need to put in there, and submit. And that's all the manager does. If they want to reject it and put some comments in there, they can do that as well. They can follow the link and actually go in and dig deeper into it if they need to, but the happy path for the approval is 15 seconds. Rather than having to receive a piece of paper, receive an email, sift through your emails, sort your emails for where someone had sent an expense claim approval, take that, send it on to payroll for processing, like all of that nonsense gets taken care of. It's managed in a list and an approval via an email, and that's it. And then we've got the same thing for the leave request. Exactly the same process. We're going to approve that, have fun, and away we go. You can have, we've got clients with quite sophisticated flows in behind here where conditionally, depending on what the responses are, there's notifications back to the request, or we can trigger some other notifications out to payroll if there's a particular type of payment required, or if payment's required urgently. All of those things are manageable, and it's very easy, and it's accessible from any trusted device and any authenticated profile. So there's no risk that the business is having to accept in order to offer what is a simple, smooth user experience. Smooth user experiences have been around for years, but businesses have been sitting on wild amounts of risk a lot of the time. They're just la-la-laing their way through things until they get hacked and all of a sudden you've got a major problem. This gives you all of the benefits of the smooth experience with none of that risk. So it's a bit of a It's a hard thing to conceptualize when a lot of your systems are running smoothly, but when you take into account how much risk is mitigated, that 99.9% figure is it's astounding. That's just not a thing that's been around for long. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal when you're starting to look at what risks you're carrying at your governance level in a business. So that's her experience sending information back to New Zealand. She's able to work on Teams, send the information back, have those approvals, all that stuff, nice and easy. She goes on holiday, and she's happy. She comes back to New Zealand. She's well rested. She's been so inspired by her holiday that she decides to retire. At retirement, she's walking out the door with the phone that she's had the whole 6 months that she's been at 77 North. She got a lot done in that time. She walks out the door, and all that needs to be done, she leaves her corporate computer with the company, but she decides to keep her phone. She walks out the door, and all that needs to be done in the back end is going through admin portal and in Intune. We do a bit of lookup, making sure, doing final checks, everything's good, and then we literally push a couple of buttons, and her phone over Wi-Fi wipes, takes all that company data off, and there's nothing left on there from a 77 North perspective. She walks out the door and she's good to go. Again, any company that's got a bring your own mobile device set up in place where people are working on on personal devices for mobile, this is a game changer. It's taken huge amounts of risk out of the equation that you sometimes probably don't even know you have. But it's there, and it's our job to make sure that we've got eyes on it. It's our job to make sure you're aware where there is risk and where risk is mitigated. This is a massively effective risk mitigation for employees leaving the business. So if you've got workers doing seasonal work, you've got contractors coming in, and it's just going to be impractical to give them new devices all the time, this is an absolute game changer. Great user experience, fast, efficient, but no risk held in that process, or very little risk held in that process, okay? So that's it. I was going to talk about if her device had been stolen, but it was a hard thing to demo, so we'll put a little caveat on the end saying, had Miriam's device been stolen while she was on holiday, the same process exists. It's a push of a button, data's wiped from the device, the business has lost a device, but they haven't lost IP, they haven't lost anything else sensitive on that device. It's just a device that's gone. Replace that, and we're back up and running. Okay, so it's a fast, smooth process, even in a time of stress when things have been stolen or lost or whatever. We need not panic. We just got to let the team know, and we take care of it. Cool? So that's Miriam's hire to retire 6-month journey at 77 North. Flicking back across the main presentation. So what have we covered off today? Business premium licensing improves security. That's not particularly exciting for a lot of people, but it's particularly important for everybody. Those of us in the room who are charged with making these decisions and handling things like risk inside a business, this is a big deal for us. We should feel a lot better about this sort of approach being in place. It's allowing us to control the flow of company data. We can say company data goes to this device or it doesn't go to this device. It goes to this device in this part of the world, or it goes to this device anywhere in the world we want it to be because we trust it, depending on the level of configuration we've set up and whether we've gone MFA plus conditional access or right through to Intune and the likes of, Autopilot doesn't impact that stuff, but yeah, the likes of Intune registered devices that we've been talking about today. It supports the delivery of consistent, high-quality work. So we're able to ensure that A, people are up and running quickly, and they're giving high-quality work quickly, but they're able to do that when they're traveling, if they're offshore, if they're logging in from weird locations or whatnot. There's no interruption for them. And that's a massive thing. A massive thing, another one that comes in there is board members. it's amazing how much risk, it's hilarious how often you will have board members grilling a corporate team about risk management, yet they are working off a Gmail or an Outlook.com account because, it's just too onerous to transfer over to my corporate email account. That's nonsense. There's a lot of risk that goes with that stuff, and we don't want that sort of risk to persist in company environments. This sort of thing allows for excellent user experiences. It gives board members or people who are lazy in terms of managing corporate data, it gives them no excuse to work around and sort of sidestep normal process. Yep, we've talked a lot about managing risk today, lost, stolen devices. It's a big one. It has a massive, massive impact on what the risk profile looks like in IT, and it removes the intertwining of personal and business data. Yep, you walk out the door, you've got your holiday photos from Bali, but you don't have your company emails, and that's exactly what we should have. Your data stays with you on your device. Company data stays with the company the moment you leave the company. That's the end of Miriam's little journey. I will now hand it back over to Bevan, and if you've got any questions, you can pop them to Slido, and we'll just run through those. Thank you.
Thank you, Nige.